So the topic of today is clinical trials and what is the process of clinical trials?
In a clinical trial, we try to understand it from the human point of view. So that is
Mhm.
why clinical trials are, divided into phase one or first in human trials, then phase two,
Correct.
wherein we also call it exploratory trials, and then
Mhm.
larger population or clinical trials. And then there
Mhm.
onwards, we call it as understanding the pharmacovigilance, which is like understanding the adverse events or side effects of the product when it is being used by a larger population.
Hi everyone, welcome to our show where we'll be talking about fighting COVID. What are the different aspects of it? Just to summarize, we've had health aspects, where different health officials talked about even things like spitting, tobacco, etc., are going to be banned, and how we need to be careful and all that stuff. We've had legal professionals talk about what sort of, that we are following the Epidemic Act, etc. We've had corporate citizens talking about how they are using their CSR to help the government, etc. And then finally, yesterday, we had a veterinarian talking about condition of animals. The good thing is, he said animals, there is not enough background about animals getting it, but he said if you take a dog for a walk or your cat or whatever, disinfect them, clean them when you come back home. So we've had different perspectives. So today we are going to look at, one of the things everybody has been talking about is there are new medicines that may come up, new vaccines that may come up, new ideas may come up, new instruments, new devices, and all that stuff. And they have to go through a certain process before they are accepted. So they need to go through some sort of a trial, some sort of a process, to go through. So our guest today is somebody who's going to take us through what does it take to take a product or an idea through clinical trials, till they get accepted. So I'd like to give a brief introduction to Meena Dalal. She's the founder of a company called Trial Guna, and this was founded in May 2019. And so the whole idea is that how do we have reliable healthcare be available to the world? So they lead clinical trials forward with compliance to regulations, and more importantly, maintaining an ethical stand beyond scientific outcomes. So how can you advise, how can you train people, how can you get them to think about clinical trials and expedite the process? So that's what she's going to be talking about. So I would like to bring Meena on.
So I wanted her to talk to us about what does it take to get a clinical trial happen, because one of the things, it's very interesting, when I was long time ago, I was talking to Andy Grove, who was at that time the CEO of Intel after he retired. And then he was funding a lot of research. Hi,
Hello,
Meena.
ma'am.
Hi.
How are you?
So I was just sorry. I'm just giving a preamble. So I was talking to Andy Grove, who was CEO of Intel a long time ago, and he was funding a lot of clinical trials, for Parkinson's. And he
Okay.
said that he's working with a professor who was doing the clinical trials in India. So I was asking him. I mean, of course, he's funding it from US and all that stuff. I said, why did you guys pick India? So he said in India, the fact that people are not exposed to too many medicines, they're not exposed to too much, gives you a very good baseline to try something. In US, somebody who has Parkinson's may have tried 20 different treatments, right? So when you try something new, you don't know if it's the effect of what you have currently or what has happened in the past. So in some way, our disadvantage, the fact that people didn't get medicines or whatever, actually became our advantage for clinical trials, because it gives them a very accurate data of whether that particular trial was correct or not. So Meena, I wanted us to tell. I want you to tell us a little bit about what happens in clinical trials, and then I'll ask you about some of the specific ones you have done in the past. But just give us a
Sure.
brief background of what you take people through.
Okay, so as a clinical research professional over the last 1 decade and now 11th year running, what happens is whenever any pharmaceutical organization or any research institute sees potential in a few molecules, or they are looking to cure or treat a particular disease. It could be with regards to prognostics, or it could be diagnostic, or it could be anything like treatment per se.
Mm-hmm.
So then
Mm-hmm.
they identify a few molecules which they call leads. And these
Mm-hmm.
lead molecules then have to be tested for their biological and chemical properties before they are
Mm-hmm.
exposed to understanding the reaction in a human environment. So once we understand, okay, what are the biological reactions of this product, how this would act on the body, or how the body would react to this product in lab
Mm-hmm.
mediums or in cell lines or preclinical studies. Once that is understood, then the entire toxicology profile and dosage fixation, like for example, when we go to the doctors, the doctor
Mm-hmm.
tell us take this much, take 2 tablets in the morning, afternoon, and night. So deciding that
Mm-hmm.
what dosage is the right dosage, and
Right.
what it should not be taken with, what would interact with us. All this is a part of understanding the molecule. So from
Correct.
the
Correct.
identification of a molecule till the time
Mm-hmm.
that the marketing approval is received to put
Mm-hmm.
the product on the shelf, all this process has to be understood. And in a
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
clinical trial, yeah, in a clinical trial, we try to understand it from the human point of view. So that is
Mm-hmm.
why clinical trials are, divided into phase one or first in human trials, then phase two,
Correct.
wherein we also call it exploratory trials, and then
Mm-hmm.
a larger population or clinical trials. And then there
Mm-hmm.
onwards, we call it as understanding the pharmacovigilance, which is like understanding the adverse events or side effects of the product when it is being used by a larger population.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's what we
So,
do.
yeah, so someone, sorry, asked what is the topic today. So the topic of today is clinical trials, and what is the process of clinical trials. And as we try to, address a pandemic, there is a lot of things that will be coming, etc. So again, to give us a little bit of a background into clinical trials, like Vipasha was asking about regulation and ethics. So you also said in your introduction that ethics is very important. We'll come to that in a second. Can you tell me a little bit about what are some of the trials you did? I mean, you did things from oncology to braille on medical packaging to all kinds of things. So give us a couple of wide variety of clinical trials you have done in the past.
Okay, my experience right from the days when I was a clinical research monitor, I used to visit hospitals and I used to work with my office to verify all the data that we were gathering. So right from
Sorry,
there, I have worked on.
once again, somebody wrote saying no audio. I just want to ask the audience, is everybody able to hear just fine? So just do some comments. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead,
Okay,
Meena.
so I have worked in oncology trials like breast cancer, pancreatic cancer, colorectal cancer, and then I have worked with solid tumors also. And other than
Mm,
that, we have worked with various nutraceutical products, even in early development of monoclonal antibodies. And other
mm,
than that, I have worked with, in nutraceutical, especially, we have worked at how adjuvant therapies can be given to patients who are undergoing chemotherapy to reduce
mm.
their stress and fatigue levels. Then we have
Okay.
also worked on, you see some packages when they come, there is braille written on it. So
Okay. Yeah.
recently we also did a study to, we actually went through a NGO and we wanted to understand, can these people really read this even after it has been written for, the entire
Yeah.
duration of cell shelf life? And
Mm-hmm.
we are also currently working with the scientists team to work on this COVID-19 medication as well.
Yeah.
So
So can you tell us a little bit more about it? What sort of medication is coming up, are you able to accelerate it through the process, or does it take a certain amount of time no matter what? Because you have to see the results and you have to observe the results, so you can't expedite everything. So what parts of the
Okay.
process can you expedite, what you cannot expedite? So specifically tell us about what are some of the medicines being developed for COVID-19 and what process you're putting them.
Okay, so across the globe, ma'am, if you see, there is development of retroviral therapies. So before also viral therapies have been there, and now also ART therapies are being developed. Along with that, recombinant DNA therapies, wherein we develop these vaccinations to be preventive as well as curative. And
Mm-hmm.
to give a little more background of it, if you divide COVID-19 patients, they basically come under four distinctive phases after they have been tested positive. So first one is
Mm-hmm.
asymptomatic, where there's no symptoms being seen, but the patient is testing positive, followed
Mm-hmm.
by a mild to moderate symptoms, and then shortness of breathing, and then the patient finally ends up in ventilator. So keeping this in the mindset, there are more than we
Sorry,
found the
you
third.
said, Meena, you said too fast. There are 4 phases. The first one is asymptomatic, where we don't know. What is the second
Correct.
phase?
So the
Pardon?
second one is where we see mild to moderate symptoms. There are
Okay, got
few
it.
symptoms we are able to see that the patient's immune system is not fully functional. However, we
Okay.
still don't know. And the third stage is where we see hospitalization and
Yeah, yeah,
shortness of breath and all this. And the fourth
yeah,
stage is where finally the patient ends up on ventilator.
yeah. Okay, got
So
it.
even though so keeping this in mind, various therapies which has been developed now across the world, the key ones which are coming in light is around biologicals, wherein recombinant DNA therapy for treating or rather vaccine development for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of convalescent plasma studies are coming up now, wherein
Mm-hmm.
people want to see that how going back how we can take certain part of the blood products and develop it further. And there are many
Mm-hmm.
more like this. So basically, everyone is working around the concept of immunity.
Got it. Got it. So,
So
like,
how
for
we
example,
can.
are they, like, for example, if you have to do clinical trials for COVID patients, first of all, it's not like you have hundreds of thousands of them that you can test in one place. And they are at different stages. So the medicines could be for, the ventilator stage, or they could be for the beginning stage. So what are the, medicines mostly for when it's very serious, or even at a mild to moderate stage, they can test it? And how are you finding the people to test it on?
So frankly, this has been a lot of contribution by our government as well as doctors, very frankly telling, because when you want to divide them so clearly, you can never distinguish, especially between, because these patients are contagious right from stage 0 to stage 4 that we are talking about.
Right.
Differentiating them, one of the method is diagnostic methods or prognostic methods where we are testing them. But other than that, to actually say, no, this is clearly phase one, category one or category two patient becomes very, very difficult. So here,
Mhm.
the way, for example, in Bangalore, various hospitals and doctors, like a couple of them we are working with, they are keeping the patients under ICU, under observation, and they are supporting us in knowing this details. And
Mhm.
that's how you get to understand ki, okay, what is happening. All this data has to come from the experts of their own fields. So doctors right now are really doing a great work in understanding all this.
Yeah, yeah. And
And
are you actually working with some of the hospitals, some of the doctors to
yes,
do clinical trials for these vaccines
yes.
and medicines? Okay, okay. And have there been, how long does it take? Because obviously, again, the question I asked is, you can expedite the bureaucratic process, maybe, but to see the results of something, you have to test it for a while and see.
True.
So, how long would this trial take? Suppose there is a vaccine today. To actually
Okay.
test it and see whether it works or not, how long does it take?
Frankly, ma'am, it's taking a very, very long time because the disease itself is just 5 months old. And when
Correct.
we have a condition so young, then everybody is rather grappling with the condition, understanding the condition, and understanding the demographic that it has hit, and then understanding the treatment which could be given. Like if you look at the population of, let's say, Italy, it is very,
Mm-hmm.
very different demographics than Indian demographics. Even the
Correct.
rate of at which Indian population has been hit, and to this extent at which Indian population has been hit, is very, very different to certain other countries. So
Correct.
these factors become very, very critical, wherein we see understand what is the demographic we are dealing with, what are the stages we are dealing with, and at what pace it is increasing or decreasing here. Like as of today, I was looking at the number of cases improved at Karnataka. It is
Mm-hmm.
actually improving, but what treatments we are coming up with along with the supportive care is very, very critical, because you could also say that some people are recovering on their own. So
Mm-hmm.
that
Yeah.
becomes a very, very now coming to approval phase, which you asked me. Bureaucratic
Mm-hmm.
ways, yes, we have to really, really appreciate that what used to take 4 to 6 weeks in regulatory approvals, actually our regulatory teams are reverting back within 2 to 3 days, and
Mm-hmm.
they are helping us to understand if there are any anything which we have missed out in filling the forms, or any information which we would not have been put up. And this is something I'm listening from everyone across the clinical trial industry, which is
Mm-hmm.
really an amazing step by the government. Second thing is ethical considerations. So, ethics committees which are available now, ethics committees are also taking a stand where they are available to you online. You don't have to really, submit hard copies of documents to them and wait for them to be coming and talking to you. They are taking the discussions on a very, very rapid pace. But the
Mm-hmm.
treatment per se, it takes time to
Right.
understand if the treatment is working. So,
Yeah.
like the therapies we are working on, they will take minimum 10 to 15 days for one patient for us to understand if this therapy worked or not worked.
Correct.
And
Correct. And you have to
along
test
with
it on
that,
multiple patients, right? So
yes, yes.
yeah.
And we have to
Yeah.
really look at the data and understand if this data is significant or not significant. And
Correct.
based on that, we are looking at multiple number of current studies ongoing, articles, literature reviews, which is present to get us understanding that what kind of a significant result would tell us whether this therapy really worked or not. And
Mm-hmm.
frankly, when our regulatory is looking into it today, they are looking at it from that view. They are very seriously reading every line that we say, and they are
Mm-hmm.
asking the question that how will we understand whether this
Right.
treatment is relatively working or not. So
Correct.
it is taking time. I
Correct.
can't
Yeah.
really comment on the timeline, but everybody is doing their best right now.
So I have we talked about ethics, right? So what are the risks and benefits of ethics in trials? So for example, in COVID itself, as you're trying, what sort of ethics considerations would you have?
So when we talk about ethics consideration, one thing is when we design the protocol itself, we have to ensure that the patient who are called subjects in the studies, they have been given the standard care of treatment, irrespective of whether the experimental interventional treatment is working or not. So that is the first requirement, that these patients who voluntarily, willingly want to support you in this research, they have been provided standard care. Second
Mm-hmm.
thing is when we even are looking at it. So, see, scientifically, we risk the benefit as well as the, or you can say, what are the various hazards or adverse events we could come across. So, we weigh basically, yes, this is the risk and this is not the
Correct.
benefit. However,
Correct.
in ethical standard, we have to be very clear that the patient has been informed of it completely. So we make
Mm-hmm.
informed consent forms. And these informed consent forms are approved by the regulatory bodies as well as the ethics committees of that institute.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, this informed consent is completely read by the volunteer because it is written in a layman's language and agreed upon and signed by the volunteers, and they are free to walk out of it at any time.
Mm-hmm.
Secondly, what also we do is we take insurance policies for this. So, any participant, if, for example, let's say there's a subject who is in the study and faces a
Mm-hmm.
mild reaction to it, So we have to immediately make sure that they are completely taken care of. We report this incident, saying, this kind of a reaction could occur in some other patient, and we report it to the regulatory government as well as the ethics committees, and we take care of the patient as well. So knowing that human life is above any scientific research is something we have to always keep in mind.
Right, right. So, who typically funds these trials? Now we can understand if it is if it's a pharma company that's doing the trials. If it's a company that's doing the trials, it's very clear who funds it. So, in case of COVID or some of the things that you're trying, like who funds these trials? Is it still the pharma company? Is it the government? Who funds trials typically and especially in this case?
So typically, yes, if it's a company's product, they fund it themselves. However, in current times, like a lot of research institutes are funding the clinical trials. And for example, recently ICMR also is working in the same direction. And also, what really, really motivates me is there are investigators who understand the risks of it, and they have voluntarily taken the stand, brought together a team, and they are also working on this, pooling their own finances. So right now it's a complete mix, given that everybody wants to bring out a treatment. So research institutes, governments, companies, and individuals, everyone is rushing towards funding these trials.
Yeah. And I just want to say we have Rachel Rini and somebody commenting saying, well done, Meena. So what are, what sort of thing one studies to be able to do clinical trials? Do you need to be an expert at what you're testing? Because you get such different things as Braille on packaging to oncology products to COVID-19, So as a clinical trial expert, what do you need to study? What do you need to be an expert
at? Frankly, if one thing is we have to be from the life sciences or from the medical sciences. That is a bare minimum that we all must have. Second thing is I am only one person here today, but there's a huge team that comes to support the entire trial. Like there is medical writing team, there is medical monitoring team, there are scientists who give their inputs, there are doctors who discuss with us about the treatment plans. There are biostatisticians who refer to a lot of pages to understand what should be the right number of patients taken. There are CSR writers. Then there is regulatory teams who support clinical study reports. Then there is what you can say regulatory support from the government, ethics committees. So basically, it is a whole lot of a team which comes together. But the bare minimum anyone should have as education is, a post graduation in life science or medical science. And there onwards, we start with our steps of right from the bottom, and we learn it up. But given that we work in human care, it is very, very critical that we are conscious of every decision that we make.
Yeah, because you are the person who founded this company. So obviously you need all kinds of experts, but to start something in this, you have to know you worked in this for a while before and you know what it takes. So it's not necessarily an expert in that product, but to be an expert in the process and understand the process.
Yes, ma'am.
So, Subara is asking, what drugs are you trying right now in trial? What are some of the things that are in trial today?
I cannot comment on the specific products.
Because it's confidentiality, but just give us these areas, we are looking at.
Okay, so one area we are really working very hard with the team is to develop immunity in the patients in the early two categories where they are asymptomatic as well as symptomatic. And there we are working with to put it very briefly, it's something from biologics only. And then other two studies we are working on to work with the patients of third and fourth categories where they are symptomatic as well as some patients are on ventilators. So I'm sorry, I cannot talk about it more because it should come from the right scientists.
Yeah.
But yes.
Are they typically medicines or are they vaccines?
These are injectables.
Injectables. Okay. Okay. So there's another question. What drugs are you trying in regular treatment of COVID, and what drugs are you experimenting with? Are there like some
So,
drugs that are already working?
see, when you say working per se, currently as a standard care of treatment, as suggested by USFDA, WHO, and our own CDSCO board, there is antibiotics, there is oxygen therapy, and also there is a few, fluids and all which is being given to patients right now in ICU care, and that's how they are managing these subjects. There are few products which have worked on other, SARS-CoV, which was the first one identified a couple of years ago. So there were few which had worked on that. Doctors are even trying that, but it's not really beneficial as of now.
So it's interesting. So sometimes the trial may be about what's existing for a new disease, and sometimes it's a new drug for the new disease. Both trials. I mean, you could take any antibiotic that exists in the market today. I mean, that has, kind of may work for this, and you may try that as well, right? So it doesn't
There
mean it's
have been
always a new
cases.
drug.
Correct, correct. It doesn't have to be, but however, there has been cases where couple of people have tried taking two, three particular medicines, and it was all over news also. However, those medications have severe effects on the cardiovascular system, and that led to deaths also. So, understanding the pharmacology of a drug and seeing the effect of it on at least a smaller population is very, very critical before we go ahead and use it, per se. So that is why any COVID patient right now is being treated as a ICU case only. There are
Ah.
no general treatments being given to them.
Correct. And do you see in the hospitals, etc., are they being isolated or are they with the rest of the patients?
They are absolutely isolated. They cannot be put with the rest of the patients because at any stage they are contagious.
Right, right, yeah. And so when you guys do this trials, etc., is it the doctors who are going and doing the trials, or do you also actually physically go on the trials and see what's going on?
For COVID, as of now, we have not planned to go and do it on our own. It would be the ICU doctors only for various
Yeah,
reasons. Number one is we have to have minimum human interface in this. And the
correct.
second thing is, having a large number of people doing the same task is actually repetitive and not at all the right approach in these times. So what we are doing is we are working with teams, so we are documenting everything, going to document everything electronically once the trial begins. And we would have minimum page work, minimum interactions, so that everyone stays safe and the data is also well documented with all the right angles covered. That
Great.
is the approach
Thank
we are
you so
taking.
much for your time. I mean, it's been wonderful
So
to
much,
know
ma'am.
you guys are trying this, and you never know, maybe there'll be a miracle answer soon. So, best of luck. And
Thank you,
so that
ma'am.
there's what about hydro hydroxychloroquine, which even Trump is demanding India to supply. Is that true? Is that something that works?
I wouldn't want to comment about it. Like I mentioned, there were a couple of news items also about this. So it is under test right now. There are few companies as well as investigator teams. If you go to a particular website, let me just give you the name very, very quickly. 1 second. Yeah, if you go to Cochrane, COCHRANE, and you check there are clinical trials which are happening for this medication as well. However,
Okay,
since there is no results yet, so I would refrain from commenting on.
sure. Thank you so much for your time, Meena.
Thank you, ma'am.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Bye. And everyone, thank you so much for your time. We are taking a break for the next 3 days on the show. We'll be back again on Friday because at Inc. we are co-hosting a conference called EXO Global Summit that's going to be happening online April 14th through 16th. And that's the reason we are taking a break for 3 days. This show will be back again on Friday at 7 p.m. Thank you so much for your time.